I want to show you all some promising underdogs, favorites, and prop bets that I noticed for UFC 302 Makhachev versus Poirier. I'll also provide you my final probability for those fighters' victories as well as their stat differentials. Please do me a favor and like and subscribe if you find this informative, helpful, or even entertaining. I've also added my Patreon information in the description if you want to support me through that. Definitely not required, but it would be very much appreciated. I added content and will continue to add content for every single event going forward within the Patreon, including extra analysis and data that will help you with your picks, prop bets, and regular bets, so feel free to check that out. Running data and editing takes hours every day and week, so I'd really appreciate any support that y'all can show. And thank you to everyone who has shown me support recently. Also, if you like detailed breakdowns and predictions, I do those videos weekly as well for full cards, including prelims, so feel free to check those out on the channel. I also do event recaps as well. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First, let's take a look at promising underdogs. The fighters' names are on the leftmost column, followed by their probability of victories that I presented to you all in the prediction video from earlier this week. These predictions aren't only based on several data science prediction models that have been trained for accuracy, but other qualitative information as well about the fighters, such as their momentum, their recent performances, their career trajectory, psychological factors, training camps, their fighting styles, and their weight cuts. Then I also provided the stat advantages for fighters compared to their opponent. I've excluded stat differentials where one of the fighters has a 0 for their stats, otherwise that might be a little bit misleading. So let's go ahead and take a look at promising underdogs first. I want to start with an honorable mention before going into the actual list of promising underdogs, and that is none other than Dustin Poirier. Now there may not be statistical support for Poirier to pull off an upset here, but word around town is that Islam Makhachev is suffering from a staph infection based on an image that was uploaded to social media. If that's true and he's actually suffering from a staph infection, it will definitely have an impact on his overall health and his strength coming into this fight. And not only that, but Poirier's boxing truly isn't getting enough credit by the odds makers. I mean, sure, the stats aren't supporting him beating Makhachev, but can Poirier pull off an upset and win given these circumstances? There's a chance that he can, and the odds are looking kind of juicy and lopsided if you're willing to take that risk. Now, my personal pick is going to be Islam Makhachev because you guys know I don't make my picks emotionally, especially since I'm helping you all make your picks. I have to keep it logical, but if you're willing to take a risk, put it on the honorable mention of this video, Dustin Poirier. My mind says Makhachev via submission, maybe a rear naked choke, but my heart says Dustin the Diamond Poirier by an underdog, pure grit, rocky storyline, symbolically a diamond made through pressure, people's champ knockout. I think the odds are too heavy on Makhachev's sides, which does open up some opportunity here. Just make sure to only risk what you're willing to consider a loss in this fight. To be fair, Dustin has proven odds makers wrong on quite a few occasions, especially recently, and he does have qualitative things going for him in this fight. This will also be Makhachev's first time defending his belt against someone who's an actual lightweight instead of a featherweight that's moving up, such as Alexander Volkanovski, on top of potentially dealing with a staph infection. Dustin's stance is also going to be a tricky puzzle for Makhachev to solve and adjust to, since he's not really used to southpaws like Poirier. Dustin also has a very unique defense, which includes that shoulder roll that he loves to do, which has worked well for him even though it's not the most technical defense, and his opponents are generally afraid to land on his elbows when he defends like that because no one really wants to throw a full-powered punch against an elbow. I think this match is an interesting one, stylistically, story-wise, odds-wise, and I think there's an opportunity here if you're willing to take that risk and lean towards a blend of emotions and some logic rather than strictly picking off of logic and statistics. The first actual promising underdog that I want to highlight for you all is Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. Zaleski dos Santos lands 0.15 more strikes per minute and he has a 3% higher striking defense. I gave Zaleski dos Santos a 45.1% probability of victory, and I think he's a good underdog to feature because he's won 24 fights, he's finished 71% of them, he's won 10 out of his 14 UFC fights, recently he's won 3 out of his last 5 fights, and he is coming off of a draw into this fight. The last time he lost was actually back in July of 2020. But discussing reasons aside from stats alone, Zaleski dos Santos has an aggressive and relentless fighting style that puts constant pressure on his opponents, and that makes it difficult for them to find their rhythm. His striking versatility, as he incorporates techniques from capoeira, makes him very unpredictable and difficult to defend against. Zaleski dos Santos' durability and his resilience are notable, having never been knocked out in his career, and his experience in high-stakes fights continues to add to his confidence. However, his defensive lapses and his grappling deficiencies could be exploited by Brown, who has better striking, more powerful striking, and solid grappling skills. Zaleski dos Santos can capitalize on Brown's defensive flaws and his inactivity by maintaining his high pace and using his unpredictable strikes. Nonetheless, he has to be cautious of Brown's reach, his striking power, and his grappling skills in order to secure a victory effectively in this fight. I think his chances are pretty good for pulling off an upset. I am leaning towards Brown in this one, but I could see Zaleski dos Santos getting it done. The next promising underdog that I want to highlight for you all is Cesar Almeida. Cesar Almeida has a height advantage of an inch, he has a 10% higher striking accuracy, and he absorbs 2.8 less strikes per minute. I give Cesar Almeida a 55% probability of victory, and I think he's a good underdog to feature because Cesar Almeida has won 5 fights, he's finished 80% of them, he's won his first UFC fight, he's recently won 5 of his last 5 fights, and he is coming off of a 5-fight win streak. He also has crazy kickboxing expertise. He won 47 fights and he has 27 knockouts, which makes him very solid in stand-up exchanges, as we saw in his knockout over Dylan Butka. He's accurate with his striking and he has a very low strike absorption rate. He was very precise against Lucas Fernando, and Almeida has a physical advantage that just helps him maintain distance and control in fights. He's currently on that 5-fight win streak, like I said, and he's won 4 of them by knockout, so he's carrying a lot of momentum in this fight. However, Almeida's ground game and his takedown defense are relatively untested, which could be a concern against a well-rounded opponent like Roman Kopylov. Almeida's MMA experience is limited, which is a potential disadvantage against a more experienced fighter like Kopylov. But Almeida can exploit Kopylov's recent submission loss to Anthony Hernandez and leverage his superior striking to finish the fight standing. Building on his winning streak and recent performances, like his unanimous decision victory over Lucas Fernando, can really boost his confidence. Kopylov's knockout power, with 11 knockouts, poses a significant threat in this fight, but Kopylov does have a weakness against strong strikers, and Almeida has shown some improvements in his grappling skills as he continues to train in BJJ as well. He does have the ability to exploit Kopylov's defensive gaps and maintain the fight on the feet and utilize his striking skills. Despite Kopylov's wrestling and his knockout power threats, Almeida's ability to control the fight with his striking and maintain that momentum could be the deciding factors in this matchup, which is why this underdog is an actual pick of mine. I think that Almeida gets it done, and I would take it by KO/TKO if you're looking for those prop bets. The next promising underdog that I want to highlight for you all is Phil Rowe. Phil Rowe has a height advantage of 4 inches, he has a reach advantage of 7 inches, and he lands 0.64 more strikes per minute, and he also is more accurate. He has a 7% higher striking accuracy. All things considered, I gave Phil Rowe a 43% probability of victory, and I think he's a good underdog to feature here because he's won 10 fights and he's finished all of them. Recently, he's won 3 of his last 5 fights, but let's discuss reasons aside from stats alone as to why Rowe has a good chance of winning this fight. He can effectively control the fight's distance and utilize his powerful striking, and he has devastating knockout power as well, which is a critical advantage against Matthews' vulnerability to powerful strikers. Now, despite being primarily a striker, Rowe has significantly improved his grappling, as he holds a brown belt in BJJ, which could neutralize Matthews' submission threats. Rowe has momentum coming into this fight. Not only has he won 3 of his last 5 fights, but he has impressive knockout victories as well, which could give him a psychological edge and instill some fear in his opponent in this matchup. However, he needs to address his defensive vulnerabilities and his relative MMA inexperience. Rowe can exploit Matthews' recent inconsistencies and his tendency to fade in later rounds, capitalizing on his striking and reach advantages. Nevertheless, he has to be careful of Matthews' grappling skills, his submission skills, his experience, and his versatility to avoid potential pitfalls. Ultimately, Rowe's reach advantage, his striking power, his grappling movement, and his momentum make him a good underdog on this card. And regardless of whether you're going for Rowe or Matthews in this fight, and whoever you think is going to win, I think a great prop bet would be the fight going the distance and going to the judges for a decision, because I don't think that either fighter will finish the other one. I don't see Rowe or Matthews getting a submission or a knockout in this fight. Now, the next and final promising underdog that I want to highlight for you all is none other than Mickey Gall. Now, full transparency with you all, this is the riskiest pick that I'm making, and I'm not saying with any confidence that I think Gall will win. I'm saying that there are things leaning in his favor that I think could lead to him winning. He's an actual pick of mine. I genuinely think that he has a better chance than the odds makers are giving him in this fight. First, let's go ahead and talk some stats. Mickey Gall has a height advantage of 3 inches, he has a reach advantage of 2 inches, He lands 0.81 more strikes per minute. He has a 21% striking accuracy. He absorbs 1.28 less strikes per minute. He has a 10% higher striking defense, and he has a 15% higher takedown accuracy. All things considered, I give Mickey Gall a 50.6% narrow probability of victory, but I do think he's a good underdog to feature because he's won 7 fights, he's finished 86% of them, he's won 6 of his 11 UFC fights, and discussing reasons aside from stats alone, Mickey Gall's exceptional submission skills, particularly that rear naked choke of his, has led to 6 of his 7 wins coming via submission. And although he's faced some easy opponents and gotten wins against them, I think that he has some valuable UFC experience that his opponent doesn't have coming into this fight. He also has a physical advantage over many guys within the division. His aggressive fighting style often leads to quick finishes, as we've seen in his early submission wins. Now, I'll admit, Gall's inconsistent performances, highlighted by losses to guys like Alex Morono and Mike Mallow, is a concern. His striking defense is vulnerable, as evidenced by his defeats to Mike Perry and Diego Sanchez. Gall's takedown defense also needs improvement, as we've seen in fights against guys like Randy Brown, but I think that there's a chance where he can exploit Basil Hafez's UFC inexperience and his striking defense, leveraging his reach and his submission skills to get the job done. Plus, how many times have we seen guys with 1 or 2 fights disappoint us before? All I'm saying is that although it's kind of risky, Gall is being undervalued here, especially via submission. If you agree with me or you want to roll the dice on this one, a prop bet to consider is Gall via submission or Gall via decision. Now let's take a look at promising favorites, which I've chosen through 3 main criteria. First, they have a high statistical weighted confidence either through my prediction models or through fighter stat evaluation or some combination of both. Second, their opponent does not have a high probability of victory, so you're not going to notice any overlap between the underdogs I just showed you earlier and these fighters. And the third thing is that their odds are not too expensive. If a fighter has -400 or -700 odds, they're obviously too expensive to pick. You could always parlay them if you want, but in this video I'm focusing more on finding you guys value rather than just stating the obvious and pointing out those -500 type fighters. So I consider these 3 things, I do all of the work for you, and then I show you valuable picks that fit that criteria. If you want to know how I predict each fight plays out and the results, please check out my prediction video from earlier this week where I review the stats, each fighter's history, the results of my 7 data science prediction models, my final picks, and the method of victory. Now for this portion of the video that covers favorites, I'm only going to review the stat differentials that they have against their opponent, but if you want that in-depth breakdown, please check out that video from earlier this week. It's going to help you out. The first inexpensive and confident favorite that I wanted to highlight for you all is Sean Strickland. Sean Strickland has a reach advantage of 4 inches in this matchup. He also absorbs 2.05 less strikes per minute. He has a 15% higher striking defense, and he lands 0.4 more takedowns on average. All things considered, I gave Sean Strickland a 68% probability of victory to beat Paulo Costa. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight for you all is Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland has a height advantage of 3 inches, and he has a reach advantage of 7 inches in this matchup. He absorbs 1.07 less strikes per minute, and he lands 0.1 more takedowns on average, but more importantly, he has a 7% higher takedown defense. I gave Kevin Holland a 65% probability of victory with all things considered, stats and out of stats. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight for you all is Jailton Almeida. Jailton Almeida has a height advantage of 1 inch, he's 1 year younger, he has a reach advantage of 4 inches, he has a 12% higher striking accuracy, he absorbs 1.46 less strikes per minute, he lands 2.56 more takedowns on average, he has a 5% higher takedown accuracy, he has a 55% higher takedown defense, and he lands 1.3 more submissions on average. All things considered, I give Jailton Almeida a 64% probability of victory. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight for you all is Grant Dawson. Grant Dawson has a height advantage of 1 inch, he has a reach advantage of 2 inches, he lands 0.76 more strikes per minute, and he lands 1.03 more takedowns on average. All things considered, I'm giving Grant Dawson a 66.2% probability of victory. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight for you all is Alex Morono. Alex Morono is 1 year younger, he absorbs 1.44 less strikes per minute, he has a 10% higher striking defense, and he has a 2% higher takedown accuracy. All things considered, both inside and outside of stats, I gave Alex Morono a 62% probability of victory in his matchup. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight for you all is Eileen Perez. Eileen Perez has a 3% higher striking accuracy, she absorbs 2.18 less strikes per minute, and has a 7% higher striking defense. She also lands 3.86 more takedowns on average, and also has a 17% higher takedown accuracy with an 11% higher takedown defense. All things considered, I gave Eileen Perez a 64% probability of victory. The next inexpensive and confident favorite that I want to highlight for you all is Andre Lima. Andre Lima has a height advantage of 2 inches, he has a reach advantage of 3 inches, he lands 1.41 more strikes per minute, he has a 35% higher striking accuracy, he absorbs 0.51 less strikes per minute, and has a 4% higher striking defense. All things considered, I gave Andre Lima a 64.3% probability of victory. Now I'm going to discuss prop bets that I think are worth considering for UFC 302. So here are the prop bets that I think have value and a good statistical and stylistic possibility of happening. Please disregard prop bets where you're picking the other fighter to win. The first prop bet that I wanted to mention for you guys is Islam Makhachev via submission and Islam winning in rounds 3, 4, or 5. The next prop bet that I want to mention is Poirier by KO/TKO and Poirier winning in rounds 1, 2, or 3. The next one that I want to mention for you all is Strickland by decision, or that Strickland cost a fight going the distance. Going down the card, the next prop bet that I noticed was Almeida via KO/TKO, perhaps in round 1 or 2. I have 3 more for you guys. The first one is Nico Price by KO/TKO, the second one is Alex Morono by decision, and the final one is Gall via submission. That wraps up this betting video. I really appreciate you all watching and being so supportive. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you can, and check out that Patreon if you want to support me through there for $10 or a premium $20 a month, which that $20 will include extra data analysis and stats. Your support helps keep me encouraged and motivated to continue running all of this data and analysis for you all and continuing to provide you guys these insights. Thank you all so much once again, and see you guys in the next one.